There has been a lot of debate about whether or not there will be a new CS game in the near future. This idea is starting to seem less and less likely as the days go on. My name is Braden, and welcome to Valve Guides. There is most likely never going to be a new CS game, and in this video we are going to be giving you 7 reasons why. I'm not messing around today, so let's go ahead and just get started. Number 7, Valve will likely continue to update CSGO slowly rather than create an entirely new game. Valve has created iconic and greatly varying series in the past: Half-Life, Team Fortress, Dota, and Portal, just to name some of the most known. Not one of these games has had a third installment of the series, and most notably we can look to TF2, which has a collectible item economy, and Valve has pretty much left it be for the most part, and they're still making a good amount of money off of it. There have already been more than 2 Counter-Strike games, with several spin-offs such as Condition Zero, the different installments as far as the mod goes. It has a long history. CSGO has been out for nearly 7 years now, and Valve are still updating it, at least once a year. Rumors have been flying around for ages that Valve are working on a new CS as a result of the updates getting slower and fewer in between. But with the addition of the new Battle Royale mode, it seems less and less likely. There are many reasons why it would be more efficient for Valve to just continue updating CSGO, keeping things as fresh as are needed and creating a new IP for possible profits simultaneously. Really gives them an opportunity to multitask, although even then I'm not sure if that's the best path to take. Number 6, a new IP. With CSGO no longer exclusively being in the limelight as far as first-person shooter competitive games go, Valve has to make a very important decision: to continue to push CSGO as a top dog shooter esport or create a new competitive title. They also have the option to create a new narrative or more fun game that is a little less hardcore and not as involved in esports. And by the way, we're ignoring the new card game that they promised a $1 million tournament for. I don't think it's going to work out. Valve can either try to make a new competitive game for esports or a more narrative or co-op based experience. TF2 already exists, a less competitive shooter, a more fun experience with a consistent income through things like hats. CSGO is the hardcore shooter with income from skins. Dota 2 is essentially CSGO but for its type of genre. Left 4 Dead, Half-Life, and Portal, they all have their specific niches, and these are just a few of the major examples. These games have modding communities and so much more to them than what I can cover. When you really consider it, Valve is in a tough spot on what options they have for what they can do next. If Valve does release a new game, it would probably, or hopefully, be something completely new, which is what has made Valve different from other developers. They were trendsetters. CS has been around for over 20 years, and considering each game has pretty much been the same but more modernized in the series, it's gonna phase out sooner or later. The real question is, how will Valve handle this? Are they still the trendsetters that they have been in the past, or are they gonna try to flesh out CSGO for as long as they possibly can? Number 5, virtual reality. VR is on the rise. You've heard it said basically everywhere, and with Valve having what many consider to be the best VR headset right now, they are most likely gonna try to create their own VR games. We've seen the Portal demo, and we know that they are at least toying with the idea as a result. They are more likely trying to focus on something new rather than the old, or should I say hopefully. The VR genre is the future of gaming, and if Valve wants to continue to be trendsetters and be successful in this, they would probably want to make the first competitive VR esport. Now, just think about that. I know VR is still new and you're kind of constrained to small environments, but if competitive VR games were to blow up and just things were to develop in order to make it more possible, that would change the landscape of esports forever. Like we mentioned earlier, Valve used to be trendsetters, and this could be the next big thing for esports, is competitive VR titles. At CES, there was a section where the Hive had a playable room where people could walk around with other players and see themselves. Something like this in Valve's VR headset would revolutionize the gaming industry. The biggest roadblock for Valve, in my opinion, in this aspect is committing to a competitive VR, or really any new big VR genre in general, is a major commitment and change of pace, and not to mention a big risk. Number 4, Valve cannot recreate the skin gold rush of CSGO. What really set CSGO apart from other games from a non-competitive standpoint were the skins. Love it or hate it, it's true, and Valve made a killing. The hype behind the trading and gambling really got the ball rolling for the game. However, Valve will very likely never be able to recreate the sort of hype for an aspect of the game that's going to make them that much money. As it was a new feature at the time that not many people had seen before, now far too many games use this idea, have skewed it, and really made a cash cow out of it, while most of the gaming community is sick of it, but they still buy the games anyway. Also, with the way that Valve has treated skins recently, gambling has almost been wiped out, as well as the trading scene. This has turned many people away from Counter-Strike, and a new game without skins would not necessarily bring them back. Number 3, the complications of making a sequel for a major esport. CSGO is an esport, and it has been since its release, and with the popularity it's gathered over its years, making a new game could potentially kill or split the esport community behind it. Now, I'm not going as far to say it's likely that it would kill the esport scene behind it, but it could do a decent amount of damage. Dota 2, which is Valve's other competitive game, has never received a sequel after becoming a major esport and is still to this day one of the biggest games in the world. CSGO is arguably the biggest competitive first-person shooter, especially now it's free, and Valve will most likely just keep trying to push CSGO until eventually it dies out. Whenever that may be, will they make a new game in the franchise? However, if and when Valve makes a new game, it needs to be better than CSGO. They need to put all of their time and dedication into making it better than the previous game, otherwise it will have been pointless and the game will flop. I'm not saying it needs to be perfect on release. Obviously there's things like betas and major updates. Obviously CSGO wasn't considered to be a great competitive game when it first released, but that entire process takes a lot of effort. It's a major commitment. Valve has to make waves rather than trying to compete in scenes that already exist. We've seen this again with their card game. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't even remember the name of it. The only time I've ever read about it is reading about how much it's flopped. Look at how long it took pro players to transition between CS 1.6 to CSGO. There was a huge awkward period in between that frankly actually wasn't too bad. It was primarily because the money in the scene at the end of the day that everybody kind of made that full transition. All that to say, the transition from one competitive esport to a sequel of that game is not an easy thing to pull off. And being totally honest, Valve's track record right now as far as updating things and keeping everything competitively square, I'm not sure that they can manage it. But again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes at Valve. There may be a good reason why. It's not impossible. Just from what I know, it's one of the first things that came to my mind. Number 2, splitting the casual community. The esports scene isn't the only thing to consider when creating a sequel. The pro viewer base and casual fan base makes up the vast majority of profits for the game, and you have to win over the pros and the casuals. You can't take one or the other. The pros can only play because people that aren't as talented as them as far as the competitive scene goes watches them and puts money into that industry. The game isn't better in every way, then the community would end up splitting in half. The ones who are diehard fans of the game staying with CSGO and the other half switching to the new game. This is a risk that Valve would have to take, and it's a hefty risk indeed. A great example of a split community can be found with Smash Bros, between Smash Bros Melee and now where we're at with Smash Bros Ultimate. It took years and a lot of money to fully transition the player base from Smash Melee to Smash 4 and now Ultimate from a competitive standpoint, simply because Smash Bros Brawl was broken due to 2 characters and overall felt more clunky and slow than Melee. So the casual fan base had transitioned, but the pro fan base hadn't, and that has a major potential to stunt growth for an esports industry. If the community ended up splitting, it would have a massive negative impact on tournaments and leagues. Which game would be used competitively, and where would the money go between the 2 titles? But that doesn't make it a better game wherever the most money goes. And then if worse comes to worst, money can get funny, and that's how titles fall from the spotlight. And I should clarify, this is basically a worst case scenario, so I'm not saying this is the most likely thing to happen. I'm just laying out the different risks that Valve has to take in order to create a new competitive CS game. Finally, to number 1, we don't need a new CS game. CSGO is one of the most popular video games of all time. Pretty much any gamer who takes interest into the world of video games at least knows about CSGO, especially PC gamers. The game is iconic, from its gameplay to graphics to the skins. It is a game that, when made, was like no other, which is why it became so popular. The game has a reputation for being a solid, good old-fashioned first-person shooter. The mechanics are not too realistic, but competitively it had an incredible skill ceiling that really set the pros apart from casual players. Not that you can't enjoy the game playing casually, it's just a hard game to master, and when somebody is truly talented at it, you can see it. The maps are iconic, even the sound effects are known all over the internet. There was a lot of controversy when they switched up the gun sounds, which sounds kinda dumb, but for a game as iconic as CSGO, it was a big deal. We don't need a new remake. We just need consistent and smart updates. Why would there need to be a fresh start? The game is the most popular it has been in a while, and Valve has done a really good job with the pro scene, and recent updates have been pretty good too. There seems to be no real reason to create a sequel to an already amazing game. And it is easy to get bogged down with all of the negative things said about CSGO, and it's easy to get caught up in saying negative things about CSGO. But at the end of the day, the reason why people feel so strongly and passionately about it is because it's a game that they care about. And it's a game that is historically been proven to be one of the best ever of its kind. So whenever even a small change is made, there's massive controversy because some people agree, some people don't agree with the change. Everybody wants to see the best game that CSGO can be. We're not always going to agree on what that looks like, but at the end of the day, it's a great game. CSGO fans have the luxury of not buying a slightly better version of the game that they love for $60 every single year. Not to mention the skins have no competitive viability as far as improving skill, unlike games like Madden or FIFA where they can really screw you over. That does it today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do you disagree or agree with any of the points made? Did we miss anything? Let us know. Do you want a new CS game? And if so, what kind? Would you like to see a single player CS game or a new competitive game? I believe there's arguments for every which way, but this was just our take on it. My name is Braden. It has been a pleasure. Stay amazing, and I will see you in the next video.